No.
Okay.
Hello and welcome to Fresh Off the Dome. This is your topic-based podcast where we just talk about one topic until we are pretty much blue in the face, and then we'll just move on to with the rest of our lives. I am your host, Brian Nabeshin Jackson, and I'm joined by our first recurring guest, Nicole Humphrey.
Hello.
Jarrett Green.
Hi.
And Blessing Adeoye.
Yo, what's up?
Hey. So our topic is about like growing up black, and the moment I put this out on Twitter, people were curious, and like one of the first things they asked me is just like I get tweeted out. It's like, so what was it like being like stopped by a cop if you were black or something like that? Like when I put it out there, I didn't mean it like that. Like if it gets to that, it gets to that. But like like I didn't mean like we're talking about racism. I'm just talking about like just our experiences growing up black, because like I could definitely say my upbringing is like different from a lot of people's as far as like my way of thinking and like how I was raised. So I'm just like curious about like my peers, my brothers, my sisters, I guess. It's just like, how was it like for you growing up? So like if we could just go like one at a time, just like start with that at least.
Jarrett? It's kind of a great like assessment or to like the sort of misconception of being black in America from like the outside looking in.
Mm-hmm.
I think black stories always tend to have the same sort of mood, if you will. When it's covered in the media at large, it's always like hardship, discrimination, but we worked out in the end. When that is a thing and prominent, and it's still something that we fight over in the media and in the culture to even get recognized, let alone get fixed. But it isn't every single black person's experience you've met with. I would say that there's a certain level of treatment and awkwardness and I don't know, discomfort that's race related, that is, I think, congruent with every black person that I would say is my age or younger. I'm 30. So, or my age or older, I should say. So I think anywhere between late 20s, early 30s black people have probably all had a similar experience or a set of similar experiences. But that's not to say we all came from, the inner city and we had to either get a degree or play basketball to survive or sling drugs. Like that's not every black kid's experience. And I feel like a lot of people, whether they want to or not, like to look at us as if we've all had that particular experience. I don't think that's true.
For sure.
I know that my black experience is, like, I think probably all of us here, is unique to each other and most other black people. I moved around a lot when I was a kid. I was born up in North Jersey, in Paterson. Probably you hear a lot about Camden being the worst city in the country, at least in this, or at the very least in the state, but Paterson's right up there too. I lived there in Newark and Trenton for a while, then moved to South Jersey, probably 9 or 10-ish. But even then, I was moving all over the place, like every couple years, sometimes once a year. I'm a single mother of 3 kids. Me and my sister are twins. Had an older brother with Down syndrome. So not only was I moving around a lot, I was a caretaker at a young age. We both were. We had a semi-military upbringing as well. Raised by lots of aunts and uncles when we were younger. But as we moved further south, we got sort of more isolated from them. So I didn't really settle into one place until like late middle school, early high school, which is around the area I live in now. But, I wasn't, I grew up poor, but I wasn't ever living the hard life in, the city. I was just living in poor suburbs. So the problems there are a little bit different. It's not like we're getting stopped and frisked, but, the racial tension isn't the same. It also wasn't like a priority for me. I had way bigger problems, like being poor and like having to take care of a brother who can take care of himself. Trying to like be an okay student knowing I wasn't going to be in a school for very long, knowing that the people I might be making friends with or associating with in any sort of respect, professionally, educationally, socially, or otherwise, are people I'm probably not going to see in a short amount of time. I don't think those experiences necessarily are things that only could have happened to me because I'm black. It just was those things, these other things that I could relate to other people about, were then colored again by the quote black experience. So there are plenty of kids who were living in similar situations to me, but we just didn't relate to each other in like sort of basic things. Because when they would go home for Friday, they would watch, I don't know, Step by Step. And when I went home, I would watch Family Matters or whatever my mom was watching, like Martin or whatever the fuck. Like shows that people who if I mention shows to certain people now, it's like people that was on TV. Like, yeah, of course it was on TV. Hey, did you not watch it? No, of course you didn't watch it because they didn't star anybody they wanted to see. And that didn't really come to, those are like misconnections that never made sense to me when I was younger. But like, as I'm older, it makes perfect sense. Yeah. But, I think people put too much weight on the more serious aspects of being black versus, whatever in the culture and in the country than the sort of smaller things like that. Like, we go to the same school, live in the same town, do similar things, but go home and watch completely different shows or eat completely different food. And I feel like that was always the most significant part of any social disconnect I had, on top of, being rather isolated, always moving around, blah, 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 was also like, I couldn't relate to even the most simple things that I knew other people did. Just because they didn't do the same things I did, like exactly the same thing. They did similar stuff, but with different outcomes. That was always the weirdest thing to me. Like, it wasn't until like The Fresh Prince happened where I knew everybody was watching it. But like, otherwise, there was other weird shows, weird books, weird foods, like just topics of conversation were just different. That's the most significant memories I have being like younger, or all the sort of weird, subtle things that we kind of take advantage of that are super different and maybe more interesting.
Like, listening to your story, Jared, like it's crazy similar to mine. So like but like it turned out a little bit differently for me. Like just to get into my stuff. Like God, my parents they were born in like in projects in the inner city, stuff like that. Then like when my older sister, I'm the baby of the family. I have an older sister, older brother. When my mom was pregnant with my older sister, that's when my dad was like, "Oh, I need to like join the military. I need to take care of my lady and my child." So like he pretty much got into the military and just kind of enough to pretty much just lead the projects at that point. So like by the time I was born, I didn't really experience all of that. Got like my brother and my sister like had like taste of it, and like obviously we still had family up there, so like anytime I go to the family, like we would like join up with them and like hang out with them for a few days, but like I never really had that life for myself. So like pretty much like growing up, like my father, he's like, when I was younger, my dad was like a very proud black man. Like, he's not, I'm not saying like he's not proud now, but like it was more of like your stereotypical one where it's like you wore the African hat, and like you had Martin Luther King books, and like you had me like understand that being black is something to be proud about, and like he made me like, he kind of banged that into my head when I was younger. And it almost got to the point where I almost rebelled against that, in the weirdest way. Like, I know it's strange, but like that's kind of how it was. It's like, cause like I never, like, other than my father, who's a great man, like, I admired him for that, but like I didn't understand like why were we so different, and like I didn't understand like why did it had to be like, why is black this like a certain like thing? Like, why does it have to be separate? Why aren't we all just people type of thing? And then I never understood that as a child, and kind of understand that now. Like, it's always something. That's why I always say, like, I'm not really good with talking about race most of the time, because like I still have this mentality of like we're all people, so like we should just think of that way. And then like I actually have to like think about it before I actually say something, because like, you know, like it's not that simple, and everyone's different obviously, and like, hey, go through different experiences, and like so like, you know, like other than like watching like stuff like Martin, Fresh Prince, and like the Cosby Show, like you know, like I never really understood like what being a black person is. And like then eventually when I became a teenager, and you know, like you see stuff like 106 in Park and stuff like that, and like all the rappers on TV, it's like, is that what I'm supposed to be? And like I kind of just didn't want to be that. So like I kind of went like hard left on that, and just like started like listening to boy band shit, and like got super into anime, and like I was almost like Carlson from Fresh Prince. I just like I had to be like the whitest black person ever. Like I don't know why that, like, cause I never rebelled against my parents, but like if I said I rebelled to something in my teenage years, it was definitely like that. Just like the perception of what black is. And yeah, like eventually I grew out of that, obviously, and like I'm more conscious about like what it is to be a black man, be a proud black man, as far as that. So like you know, like it was just like a weird upbringing for me, for sure, as far as like the way I thought about things when I was younger compared to what I think about things now. Blessing, you got anything?
Yeah, I think for me, I mean, my story is probably similar to your guys', in the sense that, like, for me, when I was young, I think, and even now, I'm that black person that like when people hear me when I talk, or like when they see the kind of things I do, they're like, oh, you're like black on the outside, but what on the inside, which is like the thing that I always hate hearing. Like, people will call you like an Oreo and stuff like that. So I was like that type of kid growing up, that people identified with that. But also, like, I feel like I had, and I still have, like, such a weird upbringing / like arc growing up, because when I really sit down and think about my interests, what I'm into, the people I identify with, like, I mean, I have a wide range of interests that I don't feel like identifies with like, well, I wouldn't identify myself as white in terms of like my interest or anything. Like, I love rap, I break dance, I mean, there are I love like shows like Fresh Prince, Dave Chappelle, like all my favorite comedians are black, and yet like I do watch like anime, which a lot of black people watch anime, play a lot of video games, do a lot of nerdy stuff. And for me, growing up, I think the thing that was interesting about my childhood, I don't know if any of you guys have like a similar thing growing up, is that like I'm Nigerian. I grew up in America. I was born in America and I grew up in America, but I'm Nigerian, and so like me being a Nigerian black kid kind of made me almost like an outcast with like the black kids, right? Like I didn't fit in with like the black kids, but I also didn't fit in with like the white kids, and so I was kind of like, I kind of had like my own identity, and I think that kind of led me down the path that I went down. But I think it all worked out in the end, because I think for me, I love the fact that I don't feel pigeonholed by my identity in any sort of way. Like, I'm able to love myself as a black man. I'm able to enjoy the things I do as a black man, but yet like me growing up, like I was in like probably like lower middle class, you know, African parents. I grew up with a lot of black people, but I also grew up with a lot of white people. I grew up in a town called Champaign, Illinois, which is 2 hours south of Chicago, and it's like it's not a small town, but it's not like a big town at the same time. Like, it's a decent size. It's a college town, and so you have like a lot of diverse people there. You have a large amount of college students, since the University of Illinois is located there, which is a huge college or university. But then you have like a lot of people coming from Chicago, like South Side, or like a lot of black people from Chicago coming down to Champaign, and then you got like a lot of country people living in Champaign. So I grew up around a large mix of people, and I feel like growing up I was influenced by all of them in different ways, and I kind of got to get a taste of different cultures in these different ways. And so like my Black experience growing up, or me growing up Black, was kind of a culmination of things that kind of led me down this great path of seeing and experiencing different kinds of media, seeing and experiencing different kinds of things, and kind of just becoming the person I am today, which is like, I mean, I'm still Black. I'm very argumentative about like Black issues and like especially stuff when it comes to racism. Like if you follow me on Twitter, then you know I'm very vocal about like police brutality and all this stuff. But at the same time, I still get to be like my nerdy video game loving self, which is always fun. I get to listen to Kanye and Childish, which is like the rap music of like the rappers who I probably identify with the most, because they're also seen as like the quote unquote like Oreo kind of dudes. And so, but I enjoy, I love being the person who my environment has kind of led me to be.
Nicole?
Yeah, I'm like, it's really interesting to hear all y'all's stories, because like I feel like we all have kind of like snippets of like the same thing sprinkled into our lives. I think like my story is kind of, so I grew up in New Jersey in like an affluent suburb. So I think like I always wonder, my wife and I talk about this all the time, and like whether I was like lower middle class or middle class or whatever. But I definitely, like, I grew up, my father passed away when I was 4, so it was just me, my mom, and my 2 brothers. And so, like, we definitely did not have, like, financial security. Like, sometimes we'd come home and, like, the lights were off, but, like, I, like, had, like, all the video games I could want, and, like, my mom always found a way to, like, make sure I, like, got to do things. So, like, I don't think that, like, I could, like, honestly say, like, we grew up, like, poor. But I definitely wasn't, like, super wealthy. But like my mom was really, really good about making sure that we always knew who we were, because we grew up around like a lot of white people. And like, I think my younger brother had more like what you would think stereotypical issues are than I did, because he's like a big Black dude. So like he would inevitably like run with like kids, and like he didn't get into a lot of trouble, but like if they did stupid things that you do when you're a young kid, like, you know, the Black kid like over all the other kids. But on my end, like I can just remember when I was younger, my mom was like refused to get me white Barbie dolls, and I would always get frustrated because it's like, well, then I can't get Barbies because there aren't any Black Barbie dolls. And like it's like when you get older, you start to like realize like what that all means, and like what my mom was trying to do in terms of like instilling a sense of like pride and like value, because like the fact that there aren't a lot of Black Barbie dolls says like something about how Black people are like valued, or like you could say something, or it could give you a complex. And like my mom was definitely the one who was like making sure that like the school was doing something during Black History Month. I remember one time like in my elementary school, she was like, why don't you find out what they're doing for Black History Month? And like when they said nothing, you'd say like, well, why don't you read like a snippet from this book that she got that like would tell stories about like famous Black figures. And it was like, so that you would know that more than like Martin Luther King Jr. and like George Washington Carver, there were like actually like lots of other people that I'm forgetting now, but I think like Dora Miller is somebody who like stands up in my mind. And like, so every day for like the month of February, I would like go and read that. And like, so that was kind of like, I was kind of always aware and like proud of who I was. And then I think like as I got older, I started to kind of come up against this, like from white people, they would be like, I'm Blacker than you because I listen to hip hop and I like put gum wrappers on my teeth so I look like I have grills. And I'm like, nah, dude, that's not what being Black is about. But then I would also have Black people come and tell me like, oh, you're really smart, so you can't be Black. And I'd be like, that's also not true. So I was like, but I've always been like, I'm like a tomboy anyway. And so like, I already had this sort of like, don't tell me who I am, and don't tell me I can't be something that I clearly am because I don't fit into your like stereotype box. So I kind of just like I just like leaned into it. I was like, yeah, I'm a black person, but like, yeah, I'll listen to Nine Inch Nails and I'll like Marilyn Manson, like, you know, I'll hang out with my friends who are like quote unquote goth kids, you know. But that's because those were the people that I connected with, and like they were my friends. And I never let that be like I can't connect with black people, because one, there weren't a lot of black people where I grew up, but like, and the ones that were there, like, to be honest, they didn't have my interest. And like, but then I went to college, and like my best closest friends are, you know, black women who are very similar to me, and they're like my friends to this day. And like, you know, it's just really interesting going to college and like being around other black people, and like knowing like, okay, there's like the level of like what I'm dealing with, but then like you were saying, Blessing, when you touched on being Nigerian, like I met like a whole bunch of like African and Caribbean people in college, and like that was like an even different level that I never even thought of, because for me I was like, oh, you're black, I didn't have that many people to kind of like be like, you know, being like, oh, you're African, and so like I can't really mess with you or whatever, you know. Like for me it was just like, oh, another black person, great. Yeah.
It's funny that you mentioned the Barbie doll thing, because like one of my like one of my favorite memories from when I was younger is like my mom was like obsessed with having like pretty much a black Santa Claus inside her house the entire time, like it was her Christmas or whatever. So she always get like
Uh-oh, did I lose you?
Oh, did you go silent?
Oh, I'm here. Did we lose the option?
I think so. Jarrett, you still here?
I'm still here. Yeah, I think we lost him.
Oh, dang.
Uh-oh.
Should we take over this conversation until he gets back?
Yeah.
Yes.
Our fearless leader.
I think it's funny. I don't really know where exactly he was going, but I know that there's a couple other stories that you guys told that are really sort of resonate particular ideas with me. Like you, Blessing, are like I guess what's that technically? First generation, second generation?
Yeah, like first generation American.
And I, you know, a lot of blacks who don't have that, like, who aren't within arm's reach of someone who immigrated here, are thrown in the pile of black people who were probably brought here as slaves and lost all of their sort of cultural identity or cultural history with them. And I think there's some sort of, I don't know, there's definitely a separation. I don't think it's always like a bitterness, but there's definitely a separation between, you know, American blacks who are probably from the South, but who have no great direct idea of where they were and where they came from, to the black sort of immigrants or children of immigrants who are definitely have like a more have an experience that is bigger than simply just what we know as Americana, by just being in the same house as someone who wasn't born here and wasn't raised here and hadn't spent most of their life here. You know, I think you're intrinsically there you're going to have a completely different set of experiences. And I know, you know, I find that a lot of the black kids I know from the Virgin Islands, might be from different places in the Virgin Islands, but they all consider themselves like relatively the same. You know, kids from DR, kids from Barbuda, from, you know, Puerto Rico, like they all sort of consider themselves like West Indians, even though their genetic lineage is way more complicated. But they all also consider themselves something a bit different than what we would consider just like normal American black, quote unquote. I find that like most of my experiences when it comes to that has been maybe not like a separate, maybe not like a specific or like a purposeful sort of separation between the two, but I've always never felt like either they felt that we were the same. And now that I'm older, I know it's not really that simple, because, you know, we're all black when it comes down to it, when it's important, I guess. But we have such different sort of cultural DNA that we just kind of start out the gates differently. Socially, I think we all meet at the same place, you know, further down the line. But I've always found that to be like an interesting separation.
It was always like a weird thing because like if today you were to ask me like what am I, like what do I identify as, like do I say I'm African American or would I say I'm Nigerian or Nigerian American, I really wouldn't have like a strong answer, right? Like black is the easiest thing I can say because it's like one syllable, first thing comes to mind, I'm black, right? And then like the next thing would probably be like, yeah, I'm Nigerian because my parents are Nigerian and because like I grew up in that culture through them. And then also like I lived in Nigeria when I was like 11 and 12. And so like I grew up in that culture also during that very, very brief time in my life. But like, I mean, I remember being taught in school, in elementary school, that like when they first, like when I was very young, like early elementary school, probably like third grade, right? They went through like the unit defining, I think it was like social studies or something, and they were defining like African American. And I think the way they defined African American was like black people that were born in America. And I was like, oh, cool, I'm African American. But still growing up, there was still that divide between me and other black people who were like, not like me, who I'm first generation, but who are like many generations separated to the point that they might not be able to trace back like where they're actually from, however many years ago. And like, I don't know, that always had like an interesting dynamic in my life because like I would have the thing of like either, well, first of all, I hung out with a lot of white people. I did hang out with I hung out with black people at the same time, but I always had a mixture of people. I was never really one or the other with my friend group. And yeah, like I always had the thing of like black people who were like more on like the like lower class, or is that the right term? Lower class? Did I just make that up?
Lower class. Yeah. That's
lower class. Yeah, I don't know if I was like, man, lower class sounds like a mean thing to say, but like people who are like, it just sounds inherently mean. And I was like, man, did I just offend myself? People who are like more like lower class would like see me and like they would just identify me as like white, right? Which would be a weird thing because I'm like, dude, I'm African and I'm black. Like if anything, I'm probably like more black than any of us. Like physically, like I'm dark. But like, and like white people I'd meet would be like, oh, he's like super African, and then like with every person I'd meet, I'd get like they would have like a different impression of me from the sense of like who I am identity wise and like culturally, that like I always felt like I was like in an awkward situation of who I am. And not that it's a thing that really matters in the end, because in the end I'm who I am, but also like it does matter in the sense that like, I don't know, in the sense that having an identity kind of allows you to be able to pull back to like where the like it allows you to connect with a group of people that it allows you to connect in a special way. And so like me being Nigerian, when I meet another Nigerian on the street, it's always a special moment of like, oh cool, where are your parents from? Oh cool, what state are they from in Nigeria? Oh, did you do this growing up? And there's always that shared experience. Same thing with black people, right? Like I play Destiny 2 on the Xbox with like my friends Numair and Rihanna, and I met them maybe like half a year ago or so. And I was like, lately we've been communicating more and more, right? And lately, like we've been having conversations because I moved to Seattle about a year ago. Numair moved to Seattle about like a month ago. It's a long story, but he moved to Seattle to hang out with to live with his girlfriend who he met online through a Facebook group. It's this long thing. But I've known Numair for a while. For like 6 months, right? And like now that we talk more and more, now that we hang out more and more, like we start to have conversations about like, oh man, now like, have you noticed that since we moved to Seattle, cops don't bother us? And it's like this weird thing of like we have this shared experience since we're both black, right? We have this shared experience of like, oh, we both identify with this thing, or like we both listen to XXXTentacion, who's like this like, he was a rapper, or like Lil Uzi and all that stuff. And like we're able to identify on these levels that like I can't assume, or I wouldn't assume that like a random like a 70-year-old white person that I meet listens to Lil Yachty, right? Mm-hmm. But like if I meet like another black person, right, like I wouldn't assume anyway, but like there's like that chance of like, okay, well, what kind of music does this person listen to? Like, and granted, if I was white and coming to a black person and assuming these kinds of things, like from the way that they talk or act, and if I came and I assume like they listen to rap music, that'd be sort of offensive thing. But as a black person, if I come to another black person,
there's a cultural context you already feel because you're also a black person. I think we understand that like hip hop's something we did kind of, so like we can talk about it this way.
Yeah, and I understand. Like I have like a deeper understanding of black people being black, that I can like I can ask those questions or try to infer those things. Just like if like a Italian person met another Italian person, they can infer certain things since they're both Italian, have that shared experience. But it's a cool thing. Being, this is gonna sound cocky, it's a cool thing being me, and like understanding that like I can have those conversations with Nigerians, I can have those conversations with black people, and also being like the nerd that I am, I can also relate to white people a lot because of like I do a lot of quote unquote white people things, which that's a whole nother conversation. But yeah, that's kind of how it is.
That's why I brought it up. I've always found that interesting. Like the people who I know who are like sort of first or second generation black here have a connection to a bigger past, I guess, that is identifiable with a lot of white people I know. Like people like you said who have direct Irish lineage and know that lineage, and Italians who like have Italian flags inside their house and tattoos. Like they know they're from Italy. They can identify this place, and they have that other shared experience that's very, very unique to them because and again they're part of a bigger sort of lineage, cultural lineage, not just here, but from over there too. And I think it's interesting to see when we get to have that too, because so many of us don't. And some of us do, but don't have a great connection to it. Like we only just recently in the past 5 years found out that like probably a lot of my family is from Haiti. My entire, like my grandmother's side a couple generations back are probably Creoles who were like octoroon slaves in Haiti. Like some of them might have even been like, we have suspicion that one of our great-grandmothers or great-great-grandmothers probably practiced voodoo, but like we don't know anyone who knew these people. So we just kind of know it in stories, but I could never, and it's very difficult to find out, especially in New Orleans. It's been washed away and burned down twice. Like it's very difficult to find that information out. So we kind of only have it in like sort of assurances that we've given each other and sort of colloquial stories we've shared with each other to kind of sort of half confirm it. Yeah. But that's like some just cultural baggage that we kind of bring to the table at even points that puts us in different positions, even though on the outside looking in, we're both black kids. Aware of now than I was, when I was a black kid. But just an interesting thought I
had. Some things I wanted to ask you guys is like what were your icons? Like what was this thing that like when you grew up, as far as like like I'm a black kid, I know like who do you look up to, or who made you like who you are, probably like in your influences, like weirdly enough, not weirdly, but like probably like the one I can say for myself that like I like looked at to and inspired to, or like or at least like I took the most from as far as like being a black person is probably like weirdly enough Martin Lawrence. When I watched Martin all the time when I was younger, just the fact that like he was like some crazy black dude in this weird environment and stuff like that, and like and like the way that's like nothing really offends him, and he always comes back with something even funnier and smarter. That's just how I really like put a lot of aspect in my life too. Like personally, like I'm a fan of like stereotypical humor. Like I do a lot of black jokes as far as like myself, like 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 not as far as like towards people or something like that, but like I usually make fun of myself being a black person. Like I just do this all the time. Like I just do it subconsciously now because I've done it for years. Like anybody asks me like, oh, do you want a piece of watermelon? Like nah, I don't want to add to the stereotype. And like it always eat that in public. Yeah. And it's always that moment of like even like for instance like John Anderson, a good friend of mine, why is it like a pillowcase came on our show, Irrational Passions. and like he was saying like, oh yeah, you guys like fried chicken, right? I'm like, that's racist. And like and like there was like this huge pause because like he super laughed and like you could tell me I'm so uncomfortable, and I was like no, dude, this is me. This is what I do. I make jokes like this all the time. I'm sorry. Like I realized I make him so uncomfortable, and it kind of made me feel bad for a second. But like but that's
I do the same thing.
Oh yeah,
I do it too much.
That was awesome.
I do it to the point where I'm like, man, I should stop because I'm making people mad and like making people uncomfortable.
But like,
I don't even think I'm joking anymore.
well, like, do you guys think you did? Because I did that a lot too, like when I was younger, and like still now. But like for me, it was a little bit of a coping mechanism. But sometimes, like I can remember one time in particular, it like backfired on me, and everyone like, it became this thing where they like turned against me, and it was just like they're like, you're making people uncomfortable with the black jokes, like. There's this other Greek girl on the soccer team. She's also a minority. How do you think she feels? And I was like, I had this moment of like profound like frustration at the like inability for people to like to see what was going on and to understand. Like, cause this was like, I was like on the soccer team with a bunch of white girls, and like the inability for people to truly understand me and where I was coming from.
I think I'm with you because like I remember I think I started joking a lot. This is gonna sound bad the way I'm about to say it, but like I went when I think it was 2015 or 14. Whenever the Charlottesville, no, not Charlottesville. What's
So
the
that
place
was
in
like
Missouri?
a couple months ago.
Yeah, what was
Ferguson?
Ferguson? Yeah, when the stuff from Ferguson went down, like I started joking more and more about like police brutality, not in like a way of like making fun of like, the situation, but making fun more of the way black people like or black people can be treated by the police in general.
yeah.
More so as a way to normalize it, less so as a way to like trivialize it. And like I remember like being confronted about that by people and being like and like me realizing that okay, maybe I make the jokes too much and that's probably uncomfortable, but then also me being mad at like the idea that like this is something that like people are actually like faced with, and this is something that like people actually experience from the day to day, and be talking about it or like joking about it or bringing it up every time I bring it up, people are like, and not even just black people, like white people or like and people in general can get uncomfortable from it. That was something that I kind of like that I took an issue with, but I think at the same time it was like a mechanism to like kind of make myself even feel more comfortable with the fact that like this stuff's coming to the forefront and make it more normalized. I don't know. It was like it was an interesting time. I don't know. And I still make those jokes. I make them a lot less now, but I think I still do it partly for the same thing. And even on my podcast, like me and my buddy Ian, like Ian's Jewish. I'm black, of course, and so like Ian makes a bunch of Jew jokes all the time. I make a bunch of black jokes all the time, and we do it as I think we do it for the same reason that like these things are normalized in our lives, and like at least for me, like sometimes I think it's normalized in other people's lives too. Like I think other people understand like the black experience, or like that like I don't know, these things. Either whether it's stereotypes or whether it's like even like not as serious stuff when it comes to like black stereotypes or black issues, like those things are kind of everyday for me since I am black. And same thing goes for him, like whatever he deals with as a Jewish man, like he's able to bring those things up, even whether they're serious, whether they're not serious. Like he joked about the PewDiePie thing when PewDiePie was going through the anti-Semitism stuff, and I joked about the PewDiePie thing when PewDiePie said the N-word. And dude, the whole episode after the PewDiePie said the N-word was a thing because like it was PewDiePie versus our podcast essentially. But it's an interesting dynamic when you bring that stuff up in a humorous way and people react to it in a way that like you don't expect, because I don't know, it's just always interesting.
It's weird, right? Because it's like it's almost as if like I think it's just human nature for us, like in general, to like try to like just to forget about something, like just try to make something not exist. Like pretty much like old cartoons, how racist they were as far as like with black people and Japanese people, and like. You know, like, yeah, they are racist, but like we can't forget that was for the time, and like also that like, you know, like we can learn something from that. Like, and even like there's some good about that. Like I always bring up, like I read recently like something like they were probably like trying to like stop showing Dumbo because of the Black Crows and everything like that. But like that doesn't make sense to me because like the Black Crows are like the most interesting thing in that fucking movie if you really think about it. Like they're like the most talented, they're the most like they sing the best song, and like they bring life into that movie. Like that's the most memorable thing about them, not because it's Jim Crow and like they're supposed to be black people, but because they're funny and interesting crows.
Well, I think more importantly, it's both, right? Like it is Jim Crow, but it's also all these other things. Like, and you know, I think black people always have, and for the most part, probably always will live in that sort of half measure when it comes to history, because and it comes to most things. Like you were like this started with asking us who our like heroes were when we were younger, and I didn't have many black heroes because there weren't many.
Right.
Like your black heroes were like civil rights activists, because there weren't many black fictional heroes.
Right.
So it's like either you were like super immersed in like either the pro blackness as a cultural movement or like blackness as like a musical movement, or you just like white like figures and tried to parse your way around all the problematic shit, which is I think what a lot of us did. I know is what I did. I feel like that's part of the reason why a lot of us got into anime, because anime is so super culturally removed from us in a lot of ways. In a lot of ways it's not. In a lot of ways it's super Western and super European too, but I think it's easy to sort of fall into finding someone like Goku or Vegeta to be sort of protagonists in your own life because they're so far removed from any sort of direct cultural reference to anything that'd be questionable to us that we're living currently. Like there is no Vegeta in American history, really. I mean, you could probably make arguments to align particular historical figures like that, but then again, you're living the same half measure. Like,
yeah.
From when the first time I read it, like, what'd you say?
No, I was making a joke. I was gonna say Martin Luther King is pretty much my Goku.
Would that make Malcolm as Vegeta?
Yeah.
They never had like a fight. Can you imagine?
That's awesome.
How different that would be. How different the world would be.
Someone should do that. Someone should make that an anime.
Yo, I'd watch it.
Fuck yeah.
I watch like
10
Jaden
episodes
Smith
and be like,
anime. I'll watch anything.
Martin Luther King getting that spirit bomb, yo. Everybody, come on.
Rosa Parks is leading the congregation in church, like sending the spirit.
I was gonna say, like, to piggyback off of Nabeshin, like I've always had like, and this is a weird thing, and I understand that it's crazy, and so like people, if you're watching or listening, don't get upset with me. I understand how crazy it is, but like I've always had like a weird thing with watching like black and white movies because I'm always like, man, those are made before the civil rights. All these like both of these people are probably racist. Like I don't know, like like I mean. That's always been like a weird hiccup I've had with going back and watching movies. Like I remember I had a class where I had to go back and watch like a bunch of like early like 1900s films, and I was like, I went back and watched them, but I always had that thing in the back of my mind where I was like, these guys probably didn't like the black people, and like that was always a weird thing. And there was one other thing when it came to black people that it was a quirk, but I can't remember what it was. But like stuff like the Dumbo thing. Like there are a lot of situations like that in cartoons where it's like, well, why would you want to remove this? This is like awesome. This is great. And then like there are other cartoons that like I see and I'm like, oh no, this is horrible. But it could be the same situation as Dumbo, but like I'm like a pick and choose kind of person to where I'm like, Dumbo's fine, but like this thing over here has to stop. And it's always a weird thing. Like you have to kind of go where your heart takes you and do what your heart says.
For sure.
Yeah. But I was gonna also say that like for me, my hero growing up was Kanye West. Kanye West and Donald Glover, and this is mainly in like high school and college for me. But the reason I say Kanye West is because like it was 2007 when I first like discovered Kanye West. Like I'd heard singles before, but 2007 when I was like, oh, I know who Kanye West is a person, because he came out with like Stronger, Can't Tell Me Nothing, the whole like Graduation album, And I remember listening to it and being like, because at the time I loved rap music, like all my life I loved rap music. But I listened to that album and I was like, huh, like he's not being a gangster. Like he's not like talking about like killing people or shooting people or like hoes or like strippers and stuff like that. He's just talking about like stuff. Like he's just talking about life and like just like hanging out and being chill. And I went back to listen to his other albums and I'm like, oh, he's just like he's talking about like stuff that I relate to, like wearing like pink polos and like wearing bright clothes and like going like I mean at the time I wasn't in college, but he was rapping about like college and stuff and like laid back like normal human being stuff, right? And hearing that and like hearing the way he talked about it and seeing that people like took to it, and I don't know, him being this big influence that's saying these things like that, I really took to that because it was a Black experience that I related to, which like was few and far between for me in media, because like in media you would have like 50 Cent was like hot at the time, and like you'd have stuff like that. You would have like, as far as like fictional Black characters go, like it was only Static Shock. Proud Family I loved. In fact, I can name a few that I loved, but like none that I really took to. Kanye West is that. And then fast forward to college, my other one was Donald Glover. And I think his Camp album dropped late 2011, which was my first year in college. And again, like Donald Glover, Childish Gambino, like he's a dude of many talents and like many hats. And so like he did stand up, right? And he did music, and he was on Community as an actor, and he wrote scripts for shows. He did all these different things, and in every medium that he touched, he was always fully himself. He was always fully honest, and he was never like stereotypically Black. He was always like, once again, quote unquote, like Oreo kind of dude, where like he didn't really he never really acted the way you would think when you think like Black dude rapping, right? He rapped about like liking Asian girls, and like he rapped about like his struggles as like a nerd, or like being looked at as like weak, or like all these things that I saw, and I was like, oh shoot, this dude is me. And he's being very honest and being very like real about it and open. And really enough, I was just listening to an interview from him today about like how he was talking about how like people looked up to 50 Cent, or like people looked up to certain rappers, or because not necessarily because of street cred, but because they're just like open and honest about who they were. Like when you listen to 50 Cent talk about like his life in the streets, you believed him because like he got shot however many times, and like you're like, oh yeah, look at this guy, like of course he spent his time in the streets. And like you listen to him and you're like, oh yeah, that guy, yeah, street cred and all this stuff, right? And his Donald Glover's thing was like, yo, I'm not gonna rap about being from the streets because I'm not from the streets. I'm just gonna rap about stuff that I experience, which again is liking Asian girls and like just all this weird stuff. And I listened to that and I was like, oh shoot, this guy's really honest, this guy's really open. And I really like his music because I really relate to it, because he's rapping about the stuff that I felt like I was going through, or the stuff that I felt like I could relate to. So those two were my main like Black heroes growing up.
Nicole?
This is gonna sound corny, but like my Black hero is my mom. Like I'm not like the type of person to like when you ask who are your heroes, like the first thing that popped into my mind was Buffy the Vampire Slayer, because like but for me, like when I was growing up, like being Black to me is important. And like now, if you ask me like what am I first? Am I Black or am I woman? It would be Black first. But I think when I was growing up, like because I was such a tomboy, like I was concerned more with like my identity as a woman, and like being like you can be a strong, powerful woman and still be like a woman. Like so like Buffy the Vampire Slayer was like, you know, like that was like the show that spoke to me the most. And then like after that it was like Living Single, and like you know, even watching Demon Knight and being like, Jada Pinkett, you're a goddess.
I have that on VHS. It's like staring at me from my closet right now.
But I mean, yeah, I watched that and I was like, who is this beautiful Black woman? But you know, I always preferred heroes to be like a real person that like I knew, because like the thing with like stars or even fictional characters, you don't really know them, and there's like always like this side to them where they're like human and they're like really flawed. But like my mom was like the person who like always had my back and was like always like encouraging me and like making me proud of my Blackness. So like that was like my like Black hero that I looked up to. And like, you know, she was my best friend growing up. She was the one who like, you know, if I was having any issues at school, I'd come and like I'd talk to her, and like she was like, if she was ready to like go down to that school and tell, like give them a piece of her mind if like they needed, or if she needed to do that or whatnot. And she was, and I was very fortunate, and I didn't have a lot of issues in school about being Black, but like my mom definitely planted the seed in me. And I think that that's like, you sort of have to do that, like as a Black person, like, yeah, like chances are you could be in a good situation and you don't have to deal with like being stopped by the police or like any of the like really like messed up stuff that we think of today. But like, there's always still the like, hey, like, why is this person getting picked over that person? Or like, why are people picking on you? And it's like, always like, it could be because you're Black. And like, my mom was always like, you know, don't get caught unawares. Like, you have to like, make sure that you know that that's the case. And if I'd come home and she'd be like, is this because you're Black? I'd be like, I've weighed that option. I don't quite think so right now, but like, you know, I'll let you know when I think that that's what's going on. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Does have any of us had like any like, you know, issues in our life from being Black? Like probably like the main one I had, like I said, like the way I grew up, like I was pretty much in the middle class, and so like you know, had a bunch of white friends, had a bunch of Black friends, had a bunch of Asian friends. I was like very diverse with the people I hung around with, so that's never been an issue that really came into my life, honestly. But like probably like the biggest thing is just been my love life. Like I like the older I grew, I just became more attractive of like you know, like white women or Asian women or Mexican women. Like I never really found Black women attractive. Like just that's my taste or whatever. Just I don't even know why, but like that's just how I grew up. So like pretty much it's just like anytime is always like you know, I like whenever I get a chance to, like when I meet a girl and like we actually have a good vibe or whatever, you know, like, and we start dating or whatever, then like it's usually like when their parents find out is always when that ended, or at least that's when I was younger. That was like always had been the situation. Yeah, like there's nothing more to really say about that, and it'll make me more depressed. But like, but yeah, like my love life has been not the greatest because of that. Like, because it always feels like that's something you're supposed to do. You're supposed to go with the person that's your same color, and like even like my parents when I was younger, like they even like openly said like I hope you bring a white girl. I mean, I hope you bring a Black girl home one day, because like, you know, like ha ha ha, they said it jokingly, but like, you know, it's like I'm sorry to disappoint you. I'm just not attracted to them. So yeah, that's,
yeah.
It's always a tough thing, I think, like in terms of like dating and like whether it's like interracial dating or whatever it is, because like for me, I remember being in college and like one of my friends was like, because like I actually I don't date much. I do date, but I don't date much. And like I remember one of my friends was like, you probably, I think they assumed because of like the way I act, they're like, you don't like black girls, do you? And I was like, why would you think that? I don't like really. I think the quote to them was that like whatever like percentage of women in America are Black, or whatever percentage of Black people there are in America, that's like the percent chance I have of like dating a Black woman. Because like for me, like I never really had a preference in terms of like race or anything. Like my preference was really like whoever comes along. Like my thing in dating was actually more about like what girls' expectation of me was, because like I feel like I'd always be like especially dating black women, I feel like Black women would have like a certain expectation of Black men, which would be my hurdle with Black women. And like I had like
for sure.
For me, I mean, depending on my race, I have hurdles with different women. Like my hurdles with white women or white girls growing up in high school was that like they're growing up in the area I grew up, like their parents were usually like some kind of racist or something. Like there are small towns planted all around my town, and like a lot of the girls from the small towns, right, would be into me, and then I'd be like, oh cool, you want to go to homecoming or something? And they'd be like, oh, my parents wouldn't really be into that. And I'd be like, all right, well, okay, cool. Right. And to the point where it was actually like a normal thing for me. Like I didn't really get offended when that happened because I was just like, oh yeah, well, that's just how it is. And then looking back, I'm like, oh, that's crazy. Like I should have been super mad. I should have been like, I should have roasted them. But like, you know, you live, you learn, and like you kind of grow up and you see these things. I think for me, like in terms of issues I've had growing up with Black, like I never had any serious issues with police. I've had like, I think most of my encounters with officers, actually maybe like half my encounters with officers on duty have not been good. Like as not like to the point where like I'm getting arrested or I'm getting beat or getting it like any kind of harassment per se. I have had like one cop like threatened to like search my car for weed. I had like, and like for no reason, like I didn't give him a reason to. I had another cop like stop me while I was picking up a friend from the neighborhood, the same neighborhood I live in, because my friend lived in the same neighborhood as me. So I was in my neighborhood, parked in front of my friend's house as he was coming out to my car. Police officer pulled up behind me, came up to us and was like, "Hey, is everything okay here?" And me and him both look at him like, and he's Asian, so me and him both look at him like, yeah. I mean, is everything okay with you? And he was like, "Oh no, it's fine. I was just checking to see if everything was okay." And I was like, "Okay, man." Like we both looked at him, like went and drove away, and it was one of those things of like, did that really just did this dude really just like all of a sudden just want to check up on us? Like I have a car that I have a car that is like, or I had a car that was black rims and like tinted windows, right? And so like I always look shady whenever I'm driving around, but that's still like no excuse to, like, you know, pull up behind me unsolicited, like when I'm doing nothing. And so I've had those run-ins, but and like nothing ever serious, but it's always like those little things that's just like, man, something could have popped off here. Like, man, you wouldn't be coming up to me like this if I was a 50-year-old man, like white dude, right? Like those situations are always something to me. But that's never been a major thing in my life. Like that's never been a thing that's really influenced my life one way or another. But then like coming up, seeing stuff happen, like the stuff in like Ferguson or like the repeated stuff we've seen like recorded and put on the internet throughout the years, because of those situations that I found myself in, I have been like that. Those have swayed the way that I like look at those situations to the point where I'm like you see like video of something happen. I think it was Philando Castile. I forget which one it is. I can't remember if he was the one in the car or if he was the other one at the gas station, because so many cases.
Philando was in the car, yeah.
In the car, yeah. So I remember like cases like Philando Castile where you see the video, and like of course like you could only see so much in a video, but like from what I saw, I was like, oh dude, like that's not okay. And then like you see like the reports come out, and then you see like the verdict of like, oh, the police like got off free, or the police is innocent according to the police report. And I'm always like skeptical because of the things I've experienced. And like I mean I can't say one way or another like what happens in these situations, since frankly like I'm not there, but I'm always like I saw the video. I from what I've experienced with police, I think a certain way, but so yeah, my experience has like painted the way I view police. I still respect police. I still love what police officers do, but I'm always like, yeah, when those things happen, I'm always like, we'll see. But yeah, like as far as growing up Black, like I've never really felt too held back, aside from like all the subtle things, aside from all like these small things that can kind of pile up to kind of bring you back. I always like take it, and I'm always like, all right, well, let's roll with it. Like, so that's pretty much my story.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, you can go ahead. I'm still putting my thoughts together.
I was gonna like ramble, but like I'm just thinking of terms like in the past, one of my old job, you know, like I was having like struggles like in terms of trying to find like my practice group, and like I just think about like the way that like people around me like responded, like because I didn't really tell people what was going on, but then people just started assuming things about me, and it was so weird because they like assumed that I didn't care about my job when that wasn't the case. But like I knew like another guy who's a white guy, and he like was just like terrible work product. And like, not that he just didn't care, it's just that he like couldn't be bothered. And I think about it now, and like just like the way that like that guy kind of got in really good with like one of the like partners at my firm, and like has been protected. Like it doesn't matter if he does like there is only one person who will work with him because he's just known to like not produce good product. And like to see like how like that happened, like how he was sheltered, whereas like for me, like when I was struggling and maybe not in the right fit, like people weren't kind of sympathetic to me and they just thought that I didn't care about my job. That was like really frustrating. And to kind of have that like professional settings is to know like kind of like, and like my wife deals with a little bit of this too. Like when she went to Yale for undergrad, and when she was there, a lot of like her classmates would say things like, oh, those Black kids are there just because of affirmative action. And so like, for me, the thing that is maybe the hindrance to me is just kind of that fear of like putting higher expectations on me unfairly. And like, when I don't meet those high expectations, they are now like, oh, well, of course she didn't because she's like the affirmative action kid, or like, you know, Black people are actually lazy or not as smart. Like, you know, like, and that's like, I can't help but thinking my situation like I was kind of a victim of that thinking where like, you know, like the white guy, he can just get in and be bros with someone and like, you know, he doesn't have to necessarily like prove himself or like work 10 times as hard as anyone else just to kind of be thought of as like meeting at the status quo.
Nicole, for you is have you faced more? Do you think you feel more adversity being Black or being a woman? I'm just curious. Like which one probably you think you had the most struggle with?
Right now, being Black.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, when I was younger, maybe being a woman, but like now I live in New York City, and like, and I also like I'm married to a woman. I'm bisexual. And I hang out with a lot of women, so and a lot of gay women. So it's like,
oh yeah, sure.
I don't know. I don't feel like any pressure to like. I mean, if anything, like, and this is like a tangent, a bit of a tangent, but like I've become more and more aware of like white feminism, and so like my wife and I like have varying degrees about like how we feel about feminism and how we like can relate to women's movements. Because sometimes there is a lack of intersectionality.
Yeah.
But yeah, like right now and at this point in my life, I definitely relate more to being Black.
For sure.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of like, no, I probably don't have any like, well, that's not true. I've had plenty of
which one is it?
experiences growing up Black and things just being a little different for me. It's funny because, you know, I've had plenty of issues as far as relationships are concerned too. I mean, it just so happens when you live in or around Morristown, New Jersey, you meet a lot of white people. I think, which is funny because I dated 2 Black girls in high school too, and I think I got shit from their fathers as well because my father wasn't around. So I'm getting it from all sides. I think I don't think I've ever been in a relationship where like there wasn't a problem with the parents in some form or fashion. There was a Korean chick I dated for like a couple months. Though her parents weren't upset that I was Black, they were upset that I wasn't Korean. So, I mean, I get that. They did a Jewish chick for a couple of years. And her mother was Jewish, so her mother's side of the family were Jewish, but her father wasn't. Like, they were Irish Catholic. Had like 2 different holiday celebrations, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
The Jewish side of the family loved me. They were like, let's just make this kid the new Sammy Davis. The other side was not super excited about that thought. But I don't know. I always considered that to be sort of par for the course. I think what set me off sort of on a better track for, I guess, I don't know, dealing with that was that I got it from like black families too. So it wasn't just because I was black. Even black people could find a problem with me in particular.
Right.
So I was like, well, good. I guess at least it's just me. But I've had, nothing huge, nothing that would like be incredibly shocking alone, like on its own, out of context. But I constantly would have conversations with white friends of mine about why I don't do the things they do, like why I don't take liberties with certain things that they do. I don't smoke weed and never did, not because I was never interested. I mean, I'm not now, but there might have been a point where I could have been. But I also knew that black men spend more time in jail for smaller drug offenses than white men. And me walking through Morristown, if I do get stopped for some reason, which has happened to me, and someone did take like some interest in me and wanted to search my belongings for something like this, I wouldn't survive a drug offense the same way what they would, statistically.
Right.
There's a chance that it would be fine, but there's a chance it wouldn't be fine. And I can't afford to take that chance where some of my white friends could. I think there's a lot of that that sort of permeates through some of the decisions I've made in my life. Not necessarily big blowouts. Like I was never, I was always sort of racially conscious, but I was never sort of incredibly sort of activated in like pro-blackness necessarily. I was always interested in civil rights movements, like civil rights sort of names. I was always interested in that kind of history, but I would never consider myself someone who would, I don't know, be on Twitter and talking about it if Twitter existed back then.
Right.
I don't think I even really was until Trayvon Martin. Because that was the example that that could have crystallized what I had led my whole life doing, like trying to avoid being in a situation like that, because it only takes one for this to be a problem. It only takes one person in a neighborhood of 4 people who might be subtly or maybe not really racist, but like don't really want to even go down that road. It only takes one person who's very activated to do some dumb shit to ruin my life, or for me to ruin their life, or to turn into a martyr for something that I don't necessarily want to be a martyr for, or whatever. I didn't want to be a part of it.
Jarrett, you said you were
watching.
Sorry.
Go ahead. No.
I was gonna say you said you've had to like explain, like, for instance, like why you don't smoke weed to like your white friends, and like all this is like, have you ever explained like all of this to them, and like what's their reaction? Like,
depends on the person. Like,
yeah.
I have friends who are like, it's not a big deal, you're blowing out of proportion. I'm like, no, I'm not. Like, you can read about this. This is real. Mass incarceration is real. And, I'm in an affluent area, but let's say I had if I had a gram of weed on me in Morristown, it's a different situation if I drove across the border to Camden and had a gram of weed. Or if I was driving through Camden to get to Philly and I got stopped in Camden and had a gram of weed. It's a completely different situation for me. I think some people were more receptive to the concept and some weren't. Some just thought I was, being just blacking it all up. But I think the real decision you have to make yourself is like, well, I can seem irrational, but I'm not going to be in jail for it. So end of the day, I guess I'll just be irrational about it. I think there's never a good way to sort of try to normalize or try to interpret to someone, your friends or even just associates, that like if you're being questioned outside of 7-Eleven, it might be because you're loitering outside of 7-Eleven, or it might be just because you're a black person loitering outside of 7-Eleven.
Right.
And conscious of it and not believing that that's the thing doesn't mean it's not real. And them not necessarily treating me any differently than they would somebody else of a different color of skin was standing outside. If they were standing outside of that 7-Eleven instead, that doesn't mean that they would have even been interacted with. Like, I've definitely been stopped multiple times for matching descriptions, not in Morristown, but around Morristown. Mm-hmm. In my car, walking down the street from my car that I parked to a restaurant I was going to. There's a period of my life where I basically didn't leave my house without like a tie and like a jacket on, because at least I know they probably wouldn't stop me, because I didn't look like just a kid walking around up to no good. I looked like I was going somewhere to do something, so they wouldn't stop me. And I think those are difficult. As a different discussion to try to like have someone lead that discussion, understanding where you're coming from without sounding like a crazy person. But I'm pretty used to sounding like a crazy person, so I was okay with it. Like,
well, wait, have you seen Get Out?
Yes.
Yes. So like my favorite part of that movie is when he's like black and she like makes him feel like crazy. She's like, oh, they don't care, they're not racist. And then like the whole movie is about like, I mean, the whole movie's about a lot of other things, but like, you know, a couple scenes later, she's like, oh shit, now I realize what you were talking about. You weren't crazy. And it was like, yes. I feel like that scene like summed up my experience being black to a T, is like talking to people and trying to say like, hey, these things are out here, these things exist. And like people being like, you're making too much of a big deal about it. It's not that serious. And it's like, no, it really is.
And it's not like, and I think for me, I was never a person who was like, you see that guy? He only stopped me because I'm black, blah, 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 blah. But like,
right.
It's definitely A, not like I wasn't noticing, but B, it stopped me from doing things. You know, I like I said, it stopped me from doing things my friends would be doing, because I know that that's an option. So when the question is, you know, why don't you, I don't know, why don't you do such and such a thing, walk to this place with us, you know, hang out at this place, do this thing? It's because, you know, I would rather not do it than have the opportunity to be put in that situation. Not just put in that situation for me and me having to figure out a way around it, but like put you guys in that situation, because you guys don't have the gumption to handle it well or handle it at all. You know, I don't want to be in a situation like that and then, you know, everything's awkward and then we go our separate ways, us and like a police officer or something, and then you guys spend the rest of the time trying to tell me it's not what it is. Like, I have no interest in that, so I'd just rather not do it. I think it's easy. I think that's an easier conversation to have now, actually, because I think things have been properly illuminated, and a lot of the people I hang out with and I knew then are a bit better at understanding these differences now, I think, even if they don't necessarily have the same views and same positions as I do about them. I think they grasp the concept a bit easier. But yeah, you know, my entire childhood was basically made up of these things, just small decisions based on things I knew about what could possibly happen.
I'm the same way, so yeah, I totally feel you on that, man. So I have an idea how I want to end this. It's controversial, but whatever. But like, is there anything else we want to ask one another? Because like, honestly, this is like the first time I've ever really talked about this with anybody. And yeah.
Well, I have a good question. What was your music taste like when you were a kid?
Oh God, see, with me, like I was saying, I went pretty much everywhere. Like definitely like when I was in my teenager years, like I started out watching like just a bunch of rap videos and hip hop and Voice of Men and stuff like that. Because you know, like when you're in your parents' car, you're gonna listen to their music. So like, you know, I'm listening to what they listen to. So you know, I know like Babyface and stuff like that. So like I know a lot of old R&B and stuff like that. And then I remember in like starting around middle school, I got really into jazz for some reason. Like I just really got into that. I don't like I don't know the reason why, but like I really got into that. And then like in my mid-teens, that's when I started to rebel, like the identity of being quote unquote black, and like I got really into like watching like TRL like almost every day, and like watching like Britney Spears and like boy bands and stuff like that. And then like eventually I got into rock music with Linkin Park, and just like currently now like I'm just like into like whatever's like popular at the moment, and like I'm almost completely like abandoned rap music like completely, like because I was really into like Jay-Z and Nas back there when they were having their feud. Like that's like the last moment of like me really enjoying rap was that. But like currently I couldn't tell you like anybody who's a rapper now. I'm like just completely blank off me.
Let me tell you about this guy named Lil Windex.
Oh,
Now,
no.
Lil Windex is a rap legend. I'm just kidding. He does exist though. White dude with like dreads. It's crazy. For me, my my music taste was always like rap music and like gospel and R&B. Like I've always had like very like black taste as far as like music, which is funny because like I hung out with a lot of white people, and that was like the point of separation was like my taste in music and my taste in like popular media, which is funny. But yeah, rap music all the way. Favorite genre.
Mm-hmm.
So your question was, what music do you listen to, or did you listen to as a kid?
Yeah. What did you listen to?
So like music wise, like when I was younger, we'd ride in the car with my mom, and like we listened to what my mom was listening to. So that'd be like old R&B, like like Four Tops or like Smokey Robinson, all those Motown things. And then like I really like Boyz II Men. And then I definitely like, I'm not like the type of person who goes out and like really gets into a group or whatever. But like if I hear something, I know what I like. And when I was like in middle school, I would like pop, but I was kind of like, I don't want to. At that point, like my like family members I would go down, like my dad was from Alabama, so I'd go down there in the summers, and I would come down there, and my cousins would be like, you talk like a white person. So I was like trying to like, this is before I was a little more comfortable with myself and being able to just say like, fuck you. But like, I was kind of like, oh, I can't, like, I have already like strikes against me. I can't be like listening to these white people. And like I remember one time my mom, because I like Britney Spears, I like all the pop stuff, and I remember one time my mom brought me a Britney Spears CD and surprised me and put it on my bed, and I was like, why did you buy me this CD? And she's like, well, because you like Britney Spears. And I did, but I was like, I can't have this CD. I can't be contributing to white people. I can't, which is stupid. And it was stupid, and it was also like it breaks my heart now to think about it, because it was like my mom doing something like as a surprise for me, and like I was like being a dumb little girl and like caught up in my like crazy like I can't buy white people music because I gotta prove my blackness. And like once I got over that, which also like Napster helped, because then I wasn't paying for anybody's stuff. I was just buying shit. I was like, well, I'm not supporting them, but so I had friends like burn me CDs, and so I would like listen to like Linkin Park, Korn, Nine Inch Nails. I had like my best friend, she's still like one of my best friends. She was like really into Marilyn Manson, so I'd have some of those things. But then I'd have like, I'd still have my Boyz II Men. I'd have like Lauryn Hill. I like whatever, like the Fugees, like whatever I like heard, I listened to, and I never necessarily wanted to just go buy an album. I just wanted to. I listen to songs on repeat all the time, and it drives my wife crazy. But like I know what I like, and I just want to hear what I like, and I want to hear it over and over and over again. But I think like the only album that I ever really bought was like Sisqo's album, Music Soul Child's album, and I love those, and I would just listen to them all throughout high school. So like, so it's kind of just a grab bag of things. And now like whatever I really listen to is like if I hear a song on a TV show or in a movie, I'll like find that song and I'll like download it to like my iPod, but I don't listen to as much music as I used to listen to, like, because now I listen to so many podcasts.
Right.
That's true. I always ask because, like, I always got a lot of shit for what I listened to when I was younger. Which is funny because I feel like for like half of my childhood, I didn't listen to anything. Like, literally, if it was on, then I'd listen to it because I had ears. Like, I was never looking to listen to anything. But my sister got into a lot of music. My mom, and whatever your mom's playing, you listen to. And I think I got a lot of influences from her. So she was listening to Aretha Franklin, Whitney Houston, like Patti LaBelle, like those Motown divas. But she was also listening to, she was also listening to Alanis Morissette and like all types of other shit.
Oh.
So she sort of like was the first step I took into like looking into music, because I felt like music was always something that you had to identify with a particular way, or you were somehow perpetrating. And that wasn't just for like black people. I felt like white people listen to a certain particular type of music too. But I started thinking, and at the same time, I also started reading a lot. So like at the same time I was reading about, Eldridge Cleaver and things like that, I was also reading about the history of black people from basically World War II on. And a lot of the music my friends were listening to, be it Linkin Park or Korn or whatever, all have direct ties back to the 80s, Metallica, who have direct ties back to like Sabbath and Zeppelin, who have direct ties back to bluesmen in the South, because black people invented the music that they listened to.
Mm-hmm.
So it became a black history sort of journey for me as well. I got really into like James Brown, Ike Turner, Chuck Berry, like really identifying the things that we consider about our music now, like kind of where it came from, and finding sort of like, I guess a weird black pride in it. These are people who didn't write music, didn't really write lyrics. They kind of learned to play guitar because they had one, and they told each other stories in bars at night. And the only way these stories really passed and got carried over was someone heard it, tried to remember what they heard, and played it to their friends or their people. The sort of colloquial folkiness of how this music started got me into music, in any kind of music. I listen to a lot of music now, but like this sort of history lesson brought me into this music. The problem is, black kids in the early 2000s and late 90s were not listening to rock music, and it didn't give a fuck that it was like a black thing. I think if there was any contention I had between other black people and me, it was the music I listened to. I feel like we could level on pretty much every other subject, but we just could not see eye to eye on like the music. Which is funny because I listen to like R&B and shit too, but like if I was listening to music, I'd rather be listening to the JBs or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But and I feel like if I had to, I always fetishized the sort of concept of being like a bluesman, like wearing crazy solid colored like suits and playing music for like 70 people who are all in a bar and all know you, and then like going back to your like farm, and like you're just a local celebrity forever, and you live like a folk legend. You're poor, but everyone loves you. Kind of like I don't know if anyone's seen Black Snake Moan.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's basically the trials and tribulations of an old bluesman. I always thought that concept was so interesting. But that doesn't like translate in a modern day. It does now because I think I am more articulate and can really make a case for something like that now. I think a lot more people are more open to make those cases, or more open to hear those cases. But like, I know I used to get it from both sides. Like, what is this you're listening to? This doesn't make any sense. Like, black people are like that. I don't get this. And white people are like, I don't get this either. And like, how does nobody get this? This is like where music comes from. And like, you can't have these conversations when you're 14.
Yeah. Anybody got anything else they want to ask? Any of us?
So I have to be the black woman, but so I guess you guys had like expressed like, I mean, I guess not Blessing, but like, do you feel as black men that when you date a black woman or when you're interacting with a black woman, expectation placed on you for you to be some sort of like a stereotype, which kind of like draws you away from black women, or is it purely just like you've never connected? Or
I think I felt that actually. Like I remember there was one moment in my life where there was a girl that I knew for sure, like for a fact, like was into me, and she was black, and she was what I would think of as like a black woman, like full and she I think in that moment, this is like when I was like 17, 18. I think I had to be 18. It felt weird because like I was very perplexed because it was a confusing situation for me because I'd never experienced that before from like a girl specifically like her who's like not just black but like she grew up in a town near Champaign called Rantoul, which is like lower income, kind of like, actually I don't know if she grew up in Rantoul. I think she grew up in a community like that, and she kind of embodied all the things that I would kind of lump in with that group. And yeah, it was just like a thing of like I ended up not dating her mainly because I was like I don't want to like disappoint her because like I'm not as I didn't feel like I was what she would have expected me to be. But even though she knew me, it was a weird thing. Like she had known me for a little while at that point, and we both did like spoken word poetry. We both liked the same rap music. We both like we both had similar personalities, but there was this like weird hurdle with that one wall where I was like, I know she likes me, but she doesn't really like me because I'm me, and there's no way she could like me because of this thing. And it was a dumb thing in the moment, but it was an actual thing. And I if that happened today, I'd probably still have like a similar thought process. I'd probably be a lot more open to it now, but at the time, it was just like a new thing that I was very perplexed by.
I guess it's weird because like it's interesting that you asked Nicole because it's like if I were to say like my fear of that, it would be like someone like I guess if you guys remember that dating show with Flavor Flav I always have that fear of like a woman being basically New York. That woman from Flavor Flav, her name was New York. I don't know her actual name, but they called her New York.
It doesn't matter.
And I'm like, yeah, but like that's like always my fear. It's like it's totally an irrational fear, but it's like like it's even like oh I'm having a good time with this girl and like we have a good like chemistry and stuff like that. Then like I always feared to like meeting her parents and then like them being somewhat like that, whereas someone who's in your face and like have high expectation and like expect you to have the moon, have the quote unquote ghetto sass, I guess. And like it's never something I've ever. Well, that's not true. Like I met a couple girls who were like kind of like that, and that's like always like a good turn off for me. But like I don't know, like that's just like something that's so unattractive to me. It's just like that type of like in your face. It's like because like I'm my job, I deal with people every day, and like I meet various people and various types of people, and then like usually when like an older black woman comes in, I kind of experience that like almost on a daily basis. It's like someone just like who wants something now, and it's hard to say it, but like like I sound offensive about it, but like yeah, it's a struggle for me. mostly for those type of women, because like my mother is nothing like that. No one in my family is like that. My sister's nothing like that either. But it's always like again, an irrational fear I have is something like that.
I don't know that. I mean, I think for me, it was definitely more directly like, we're not interested in what you're selling, sir. Like, and I always found it sort of weird because it wasn't like I wasn't deeply into like Black issues and Black thinking. I think me and with the exception of a couple of them had different opinions of what Black thinking were. Or what portions of Black culture that they were really interested in. Like what a Black man was to them is still a part of like a Black cultural sort of ideology of Black men, but it wasn't what I was looking for. And when was that? It wasn't anything I was going to attempt to be. Like I wasn't going to attempt to be 50 Cent. But I also wasn't looking personally for like a New York. I was looking for like an Angela Davis. Maybe someone not as militantly Black, but someone who like appreciated, like, even if you didn't like, if it was going to be about, being Black and like Black culture or something like that. And that was going to be a staple of our relationship. I would rather us be talking about sort of cultural things and like historical things than like, I don't know, the music on the radio, because I wasn't interested in it necessarily. Like I was interested, but like I didn't want to be it. And it wasn't like a culture I really felt connected to or really wanted to immerse myself in. Like I was entertained by rap music at the time, and that was basically as far as my relationship with it was. But like I wasn't trying to go to like, sneak into clubs or like go to like the young boy club and like we let 16-year-olds in and serve them like ginger ale just to dance to rap music. That wasn't my interest. Anyone who would, it happened very infrequently. No one really would call me out on anything necessarily. But anytime I would get into something like that, some sort of tiff about it, like I was always confused because it's like, it's not like I don't know where you're getting this idea that I'm somehow less Black than you. Like I know when the Black Panther Party started, like I know, like I watched, A Different World. Like I understand, like, at least in my opinion, I understood Black culture more than, the people levying these sort of criticisms at me. And it wasn't necessarily off-putting, but it's like, where am I going to find the people who are interested like that in shit like I am? And I don't think I was going to find someone like that young. I didn't start meeting those people till like after I left high school.
Yeah, definitely.
Like when I went to college and when I started going places by myself, that weren't in the sort of social bubble that was high school and the surrounding sort of overlapping Venn diagrams of people. When I started meeting more people, I realized those people also exist, but that, had its own problems. Cause now I got to do all that work to go find these people. And it's like, I really don't want to do that either. But at least I know they exist. I don't sound crazy. I don't feel crazy. Yeah, I don't think any relationship I've had with Black women has been bad, and I don't think I've ever had any of those particular feelings towards them. It's just kind of confusing. Like, how can we both, be from similar cultures, but not have any, but be missing the boat? So, or like be passing ships when it comes to things like this, like so widely and so completely like obtusely. How can we both don't land on any of these common sort of things I thought were common ground? That was always confusing to me when I was younger.
For sure.
I only asked just because, like, for me, when I was growing up, like, Black girl in like suburbs, it's like I thought that the only chance that I would have of like anybody dating me was a Black man. And it's like, it's really interesting because my wife, like, her brother is like kind of like very similar to all of us. And she's like always like, oh, like, I'm afraid he's going to end up with like a white girl. And like I've like evolved on this idea because it's just like my youngest brother is marrying a white girl, and it's like you see the person that he is, and like how comfortable he is with his blackness, and like there's like this is just the person that he connected with, and it's like if getting to the point as a Black woman where you can just be like, look, like if this is who this person connects with, like you should let them connect. But like it's always a weird thing for me because like for me, my wife is Black, and like I couldn't imagine not marrying someone who's Black just because like I feel like she gets me in so many ways that like I don't know if a person of another race could get me like that.
Do we have anything else before I close this out with the last question?
Is anybody here playing Destiny 2? Great game.
I would not be playing on Xbox, Blessing, but sometimes I think about doing that, and then sometimes I realize that I like playing single player games by myself.
And Destiny 2 is so great. I'm the same way. I like single player games, but I've been playing Destiny. I put in like probably like almost 60 hours at this point, and it's only been out for like a couple weeks. And yeah,
I have lots of feelings about Destiny.
It's a thing.
It's definitely a thing.
If you ever get on Xbox, hit me up because I'm trying to complete this raid, and so.
No, I got this thing. I've never owned an Xbox in my life, so now it's kind of just like a badge of honor that I wear with pride.
Now, I got my first Xbox last year, and it was like an event. I only got it because of a price error, and so I got it really cheap. And I was like, well, if I'm gonna own an Xbox, this is gonna be the reason. Like, it's gonna be really cheap. And yeah, like I barely play anything on it except for Rare Replay. But you know what? Rare Replay is a great game, and I play Destiny now on it because my friends have Destiny on Xbox, and so yeah, Rare Replay is definitely worth it.
Are you saying Rare Replay is a system seller?
I think for me it is. Like, and that's a whole different conversation, but that's like 30 games made by one of the greatest developers of all time. Like, come on, son.
Old games, old
decision.
Old games, old.
This is also true. But Banjo-Kazooie, Jet Force Gemini, like Conker's Bad Fur Day, like Perfect Dark. I can keep going. Jetman or Solar Jetman. I don't forget what it's called, but there's classics on there.
And some other fucking games, whatever.
It's some other games that nobody's ever heard of. Banjo-Kazooie, Nuts and Bolts. Come on, man. That's like classics right there. I never played Nuts and Bolts, and so I know nothing about it. It could have bad reviews for all I know. Banjo-Tooie though, it's great.
Yeah, I've heard. So the last thing I wanted to ask you guys about, like, stick with me with this because like it's something I've always been thinking about, and I never asked anybody about this, but like it's always just like something that's been like in my mind since it happened. It's an SNL sketch. It's with Dave Chappelle. And it was a scene where like it was like the end of the 2016 election, and like he was in the room with white people, and like and like you know, like it eventually showed that like Donald Trump was the winner of that election, and you know,
that when him and like Chris Rock are like also like in the room, and everyone's like incredulous, and they're like, of course. Yeah. And I'm just wondering like because like I remember that day because I experienced it myself, and like my line of thinking, like, because I was laying in my bed and I was like, I'm just gonna watch the news and just like lay in my bed and just watch what happens, because I was thinking like this is either gonna be like a like super majority towards Hillary Clinton, or this will be like too fucking close, and like it could be like probably Donald Trump, and like as soon as I saw like the state after state, I was like, yeah, it's gonna be like this, like the way too close for comfort type of thing, and like eventually he won. So like when that happened, like I just felt like, yeah, I'm not surprised. Like that's literally how I felt in my soul.
My coworkers, like before when like the day before election, everybody was like, everybody was talking like Hillary was gonna win, and like I think my boss or whatever asked me like, who do you think got it? I was like, dude, I think Donald Trump's gonna win. And everyone was streaming like I was crazy, and they're like, why? But I was like, dude, Donald Trump's supporters are so vocal, and I don't think people get that living in Seattle. Like when I lived in the Midwest, or like when I look at my Facebook feed, because I have a lot of friends that live in Illinois, I see a lot more vocal Trump supporters than I see vocal Hillary supporters. Like a lot of people hate Trump, but the people like Hillary supporters aren't vocal. Like they exist, but they're not like vocal like Donald Trump supporters are vocal. Like Donald Trump supporters seem like the kind of people that are going to like go out there and make action because they're mad about like whatever they're mad about. And yeah, like so when it happened, I was like, well, yeah, like if you see the trajectory, like if you look at like the internet or watch news or like look at society in general, there's just this trajectory of like white people or like, and like I mean I knew a couple of Puerto Rican people that voted for Trump. It was the strangest thing. Well, I guess people in general just being, I don't know, like
because it makes me feel like I feel like an old pessimistic black man during that day. I was like, I knew this was going to fucking happen because like this is like white society or something like that. Like, that's how I felt, and like I felt bad because I felt that way.
Well, I mean, but it's okay. Sorry. No, I've talked way too much.
Oh no! All I was gonna say was that like, what was I gonna say? I already forgot what I was gonna say. So you can go ahead.
I'm sorry, Blessing.
Oh, no,
well, like similar to piggyback off of what you were saying about your friends in Illinois. At the time, my wife was living in Alabama, and she was like, "No, you don't understand what it's like living in these red states. These Trump supporters are really, really serious." And like even me, like I thought it was like a big joke, and then he won the primary, and I was like, oh shit, like something's not right. Like, and then you see Brexit and you just hear about like this wave of conservatism like sweeping over like the world, and you're just like, you know, and like in that sketch, to me, I love that sketch because it is kind of like what we've been talking about, right? Like this like whole like trying to tell people like, hey, like there's something like that's not right, like and it's like you just look at everything that's going on, like whether it's Black Lives Matter or whether it's these like football players protests, like the way people just view these things like is so baffling to me. Like the inability to kind of empathize with like the racial tension, or like what people who are minorities are trying to say, and like to like bring light to these things, and like sort of the dismissiveness, sort of this like willingness to be like, but we're better now. We've like overcome. And then when it's like, no, we haven't. We have real issues in this country.
No. That's what it was. Like totally. Oh my God.
That's it. Yeah. And you know, I think the two Americas concept was never more real to a lot of people until like the day after that election. And you know, it makes you feel cynical when you're just like, of course this is what happened.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, you're right. So how cynical are you really? So, you know, and I think I know a lot of people who are like, this can't be happening. And, you know, it's funny because I think the only person, my best friend works with me. He works in a different department, but besides us, everybody else who works there is an old conservative white person. Literally the owner, who I share an office with, is the husband of a Republican senator from New Jersey. Like they are on board, like, and they were on board forever. And it wasn't even so much they were on board for Donald Trump. They were just strongly against Hillary Clinton. And that's like really what happened here. It wasn't like Donald Trump was so magically like, I don't know, convincing to a lot of people that he won all these votes because people like him. I think he won most of his votes because only 34% of the people of the party are his base. Everybody else is like, I guess this is what we're doing now. And they were just really weren't excited about what 4 years of Hillary Clinton could do. So they were like, well, I mean, can it really be that bad? And then they voted Donald Trump. I know a lot of people like that. More people than I think I know who were like legitimately Trump fans. And I think that is where I got the idea. Like as soon as he won the primary, I was like, it's impossible for him not to win, because he beat 12 or 13 other people. 4 of those people were probably way more qualified. The other ones are just jokes. But like, and even Jeb Bush or like Ted Cruz are kind of jokey too. But like, Jeb Bush is part of the Bush dynasty. Like there is no better example of a conservative president than Jeb Bush. It just so happens that he is just such a iconoclast that he can just wipe these people away. And if he can do that to people who are clearly more qualified, have longer track records for actually governing people, then why couldn't he just convince half the country to come out and vote for him when it matters? And he did.
Yeah.
It's like, why is this such a surprise to people? Like,
right.
Yeah, it's funny because I had the thought when he won, like I was like, man, well, at least this will prove that like racism and sexism and all these things are alive in America. And I was like, wait a second. Oh, this is the person that like America is like made president. That's not how
this is not how you prove it.
Yeah, I was like, oh, no, this is the result. And it was a whole realization for me of like, well, maybe people will believe me now. But then it was like, wait a second, no, this is what they want. And so yeah.
Or that there's no such thing as a meritocracy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that you don't have to be good at anything. You just gotta be there.
Pretty much.
Man. Yeah.
And in fairness, Donald Trump's been running for president probably since the 80s, so in some form or fashion. But so it wasn't exactly easy for him either. But I think a lot of factors came to play at the same time here and made this pretty inevitable. And I think the black reaction and the white reaction were very different reactions. And I would have to, I can't think of a black person that I know personally who thought this was completely impossible.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I'm sorry. Like, I'm just remembering that day. That was like, and just like going and just like seeing, because like a lot of my friends were crushed that day, and like I had to DM a bunch of them, just to talk to them, and just because they were feeling so depressed and everything like that, and it made me like sad to my soul that like there were teachers and like stuff like that, and like they felt lost, and like I spoke to them into a way to give them hope, but like in some way I'm like kind of lying through my teeth the same way at the same time, because it's like like I can say, oh, this is just a fluke, don't I was trying to like reconcile them, but I was also trying to tell them the truth at the same time. Like I just don't like being that type of person. Like it makes me feel really bad being that type of person who's like, even though it was like it's the truth, but like at the same time it like seeing someone like break down like live on Twitter and like having to DM them to like calm them down, like that was like a hell of a day for me that day.
Was this a white person option or was this a black person?
No, it was a friend of mine. She's a teacher, and she was really excited to like because like she had like little girls come up to her, and like she's let's just say she's not white, and she was like really excited to like because like all her kids are like other races as well, because like that's the area that she's in, and like they were like really excited, like, oh, we're gonna have a first woman president type of thing, and like she was like more or less hyping them up because like she had a lot of faith in that, and like she like kind of broke down saying like, what do I tell these kids now? Like how do I tell them that like someone like that can be president? So that was a tough day. But thank you guys. Like seriously, like I remember looking on Twitter about like this, like Jarrett and I'm Blessing just talking like every once in a while they just like say something like, oh, we should like do something black related or something like that, and like I don't know, that's kind of what sparked this up, and like
I love all things black related.
And like this is what sparked this idea, just to like actually just have this conversation, because like I said, I've never really talked to anybody about like this stuff in general, like, so this is like a catharsis type of thing, like coming to Jesus moment of my blackness, I guess. So I don't know.
Awesome.
But this has been Fresh Off the Dome. Thank you for listening. If you stayed along for this long as almost 2 hours. Like Blessing, like pimp your shit, man. Like where can they find you?
Yo, you can of course like follow me on Twitter at Blessing Jr. I have a website that I do podcasts, videos, and articles for. It's called OK Beast, and so you can check out okbeast.com for all that stuff. It's all video game related and culture related, and so we have stuff about video games, music, movies, culture in general. But we have a large focus on like nerd culture, and so that's where you can find me.
All right, Jarrett.
I am a lot of places. I primarily split my time between Irrational Passions, where I host a couple of podcasts, the Monthly Passions podcast, which will be back at some point, I think. And currently the new Input podcast, a video game news show with myself, Logan Wilkinson, and George Cruz. I am also a freelance writer. You can find lots of my work at gamepedia.com, where I write strategy guides and wikis. I also have bylines places like Playboy and IGN, and actually okbeast.com. I write words about video games mostly. If you come and follow me on Twitter, I talk a lot of shit about a lot of things.
And what's your Twitter?
It's at Jarrett John. If you want spicy takes, go on Twitter and find at Jarrett John.
All right, Nicole?
Well, I'm nowhere near as cool as everyone else here, but if you want to follow me, my Twitter handle is NMH2105.
Awesome. And I've been your host, Brian Nabeshin Jackson. You can follow me on Twitter at NABESHIN186. You can hear me on Irrational Passions like every week. We talk about video games and other dumb shit. And this has been fresh off the dome. This isn't something like I always have to pitch this show at the end. This isn't something that I actually want to get like famous or something like that. That's why there's no really like a podcast service for this. This is just strictly on YouTube. Just like I just want something just like to have like an open conversation about something. This is what it's all about. Like stuff is usually on my head and I just want to like talk about it with somebody, and like I just want to like get everything off my chest about it. Whether it's politics or video games or foods or movies or anything like that. So like but yeah. Thanks guys for being on here, and like we'll catch you guys later. Goodbye.